Okay. Our next speaker, we're going to do something a little bit unique. My good friend Eric, I gave him a call when we were planning this, and I've had a lot of conversations over the years with Eric about the kind of work that he does. Eric McBurney is a firefighter that works in the city of Phoenix, and he also was on pastoral staff for a number of years working in adult discipleship, so we became very good friends. And he takes that kingdom of God conversation into the firehouse in very unique ways. And so I'm going to interview him for your benefit tonight and allow him to talk a little bit about his work. Please welcome Eric McBurney. This is how you know it's an interview. We're going to sit.
That's right.
Is that impressive? Eric, tell me a little bit about your family and how long have you been fighting fires?
Well, I've been married for 18 years to my wife, Karen. We've got 3 kids, Austin, Tyler, and Lauren. I've been working for the city of Phoenix as a firefighter for 15 of those years. Primarily working in the kind of around downtown, a little bit east of downtown. I've worked in South Phoenix, and I'm currently stationed in Ahwatukee.
Perfect. So I said earlier that you'd been at the church for a while. You actually were on pastoral staff. Tell us a little bit about how you became a Christian.
Yeah, I became a Christian here. So I showed up here 15 years ago-ish, and I was tired. I was broken. I was discouraged because I had been running on the performance treadmill for my whole life. And the gospel's preached here faithfully every week, and so it was the good news that Jesus had died for me, and that I'd been reconciled to the God that I'd feared my whole life. And so I was set on fire for him. But
did you plan that pun?
Huh?
Did you plan that pun?
I was on fire for him. Glad you picked that up. It's good.
Okay, so at that point you were already a firefighter?
Yep.
You become a Christian?
Yeah.
How does your new faith inform your work as a firefighter at that point?
So my new faith was primarily about God's work to redeem and restore me, this sinner that just couldn't find peace with him. And so because my faith was primarily about me and this amazing grace of God, my work and my faith had to intersect when I was telling people about Jesus or reading my Bible at my station. But those conversations didn't come often, so my faith and work rarely intersected at that time.
Now, I know from countless conversations that we've had that you don't see your work in that same way anymore. What changed or what happened that made you kind of transform in the way you viewed your work and your faith?
Yeah. So as I began to grow here and understand that the gospel, the good news of the gospel was bigger than simply God redeeming and restoring me. That the gospel was even bigger than God redeeming and restoring us. The church, the gospel, the good news of the gospel was that God was redeeming and restoring every square inch of his creation, right? It became way bigger than just vertically him redeeming and restoring, to him redeeming and restoring everything under the sun. Here at Redemption Gilbert, the way we say that is all of life is all for Jesus, right? And so I began to ask myself, as the posters are posted outside the Commons and the language is used a lot, if all of life is all for Jesus, then how is my job as a firefighter all for Jesus, right? I began to wrestle with that. Like, what does that look like? All of it? How do I do that? And so Colossians 1:13 ended up being a really helpful verse that kind of grounded me and gave me eyes to see it. It says, for you've been delivered from the domain of darkness, right? And transferred to the kingdom of the Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. And so I began to see there's 2 domains at work here. There's the domain of light, where everything in the creative order is the way it's supposed to be. And then there's darkness, and where everything in the creative order that begins to get broken, and it's not the way that it's supposed to be. And I started to realize that the very emergencies that I'm responding to every shift are in the domain of darkness, right? And if light pushes darkness away, then my response as a firefighter to these places of darkness is participating in God redeeming and restoring. Where there's brokenness, as a firefighter, I respond on a fire truck and bring restoration. Where there's chaos, I bring order. And so I began to realize, man, my faith and work are going to intersect more than just when I'm having conversations with people. The actual job that I do participates in that.
So this idea that there's darkness out there, I know sometimes that can lead to, I've grown up in the church and I've heard that kind of talked about in a like us versus them mentality,
right.
But I don't think that's really what you're getting at. What does the darkness look like on these calls that you're going at? What are you getting at with that?
Yeah, darkness. I'm pretty sure house fires did not belong in the creative design that God had made for the world. Right? Houses that are on fires, apartments that are on fires, car fires, people trapped in fires. So one of the primary ways that I see my job intersecting with my faith is in my response to a fire, right? Firefighters put out fires. So I had used to seeing fire calls as kind of like the glorious call that we get to respond on. House fires are the things that every firefighter is excited about doing. It's why we go to work. It's what we like to do. But I had never seen it as a place where my faith was intersecting with my work. Now I understand that a house fire is a domain of darkness. It's an area of God's creation that's been broken, right? And so now me as a firefighter, I get on that fire truck, and when I go put that fire out, I'm bringing order to a place of chaos. I'm bringing restoration to a place of brokenness. So fire calls is just one of the places where it began to change. I remember being in the station one day, and I was actually reading my Bible because I had brought my faith to work. And our captain got over the intercom and he said, "Hey, guys, mount up. We're going to go train." And I remember closing my Bible thinking, gosh, man, I got to stop doing the thing that matters to God to go do this thing, to go train for fires. That was a misunderstanding of the gospel there. So running on these fires, training for fires is one of the places. Medical calls, 85% of what we do is medical. You talk about the domain of darkness, heart attacks, strokes, gunshot wounds, seizures, drownings are all not the way that God designed the world to be, right? They're a domain of darkness. And so responding to these calls that we go on all the time is just where I begin to see that my faith is actually on the ground working itself out. Is I see myself as an instrument of light going to a place of chaos and bringing order. Every time a paramedic gives nitro to a patient with chest pain, it's as if I'm seeing darkness being pushed away, light being brought in as we restore order in a place of brokenness.
Okay, so
yeah.
You sound pretty heroic actually right now. I've felt
It's
this
what we
many
do.
times talking with you, and I'm always like, oh, Eric's so cool.
Right.
He puts out fires and saves people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know from our conversations that there's like a lot of frustrating stuff that happens when you're a firefighter. What does that look like, and how does your faith help you handle that kind of thing?
Yeah.
And what does a frustrating call look like? Give us some example.
Well, we do. We respond to calls that are really frustrating. And to be honest with you, it exposes a side of my heart that's real dark. This is the moment when I get to kind of expose myself here in front of all of you and get real transparent. But that's why I'm up here. So I work in the city of Phoenix, and in the city of Phoenix, we have a very large homeless population. The station that I was at for most of my career, about 9 years, we ran on the homeless population quite a bit. Most of the time that we responded with them, it calls that seemed totally non-emergent. The kind of call where you're going, what are we doing here? Like, why are we here right now? And in those places, what ends up happening year after year, bitterness just starts to set in, right? And you start to see this population of people with bitterness and judgment. And it frustrates me, right? It really frustrates me because I know this is a population of people that Jesus dearly loves. Why am I struggling so hard to have compassion here? Until I met Robert. Robert was a homeless man that we had run on every single shift, sometimes multiple times a day. And Robert taught me a lesson about compassion that I carry with me to this day, right? So Robert was homeless on the streets of Phoenix, and someone that we would see every night between 11 and midnight as he would come back from the light rail and he'd walk through our area, and he was always drunk and falling down. And so every single night we were coming and picking him up and taking him to the homeless shelter. And so one morning I got up and I said, hey, I'm gonna go to the homeless shelter here and I'm gonna pick him up and I'm gonna take him to breakfast, and we're gonna sit down over some food and coffee, and we're gonna talk, and I'm gonna straighten him out. Right? That's exactly what my intention was. I'm going to straighten him out. I'm going to help him out, but I'm going to straighten him out. And what happened was one of us left there changed, and it was me, right? As Robert began to share his story with me, as Robert began to share with me where he grew up in Albuquerque and what brought him here to Arizona, and meeting his wife, getting married, buying their first home, paving this road up to their new home, and putting in a well, they had water. And as he talked about his wife and his new home, you could see the excitement in his eyes. And he became human to me. What happened in that moment is Robert, the guy that we had run on every shift, was just a call we run on. He was somebody who I was really frustrated with. And as he began to describe his story, he went from just a homeless man we run on to a man with a story, right? He became a son. He became a brother. He became a father. He became a husband. He taught me in that moment a lesson about human dignity that has helped me to take a heart of judgment, darkness, and it drives it out with compassion, light. So Robert died a few weeks after our morning with breakfast. But he is with me today. He is his words, what he taught me about his story is one of those things that help me when I'm in that position of judgment. I'm struggling to have compassion. I remember the person that I'm running on has a story. The brokenness that I see today has a story to it, and that story informs it. So that's just one of the ways that those frustrating calls, this particular homeless man helped me to learn how to replace judgment and anger with compassion. So
that's really great. We could go on and on. We set aside 9 minutes. If you're a guy in the room, I'm actually going to do a more extended interview with Eric at Men's Breakfast next Saturday in the Commons at 8 o'clock. So if you want to be there and hear a little bit more of what Eric does as a firefighter, and look how heroic he is. Don't you want to hear more stories? I know. Why don't you thank Eric for being here? Thanks a lot, Eric.